doing this. So people who don't know, Damon's actually in Texas. And we thought we were going to do this at 1:30. So I appreciate you actually accommodating kind of the time frame and stuff.
Yeah, and it's no problem, man. Hey, mistakes happen all the time, man. I mean, I think if anything, you know, you learn from prison and you learn from this experience right here. You got to pivot, man. You got to pivot and call an audible at the line of scrimmage and change the play. So
you're dropping nuggets already, man. We haven't got started.
Man,
well, hey, man,
this is the way I live, man. I love going full speed, man. So hopping from one thing to the next is cool with me, man. I'm ADHD, so I like switching tasks.
The first time I heard you was at the Alliance. You came on, started sharing your story, and everybody that knows me is texting me like, dude, you guys are like, man, he's high energy, he's this. I hear you and Damon. I remember I went to the Alliance convention. I'm like, I don't care what, I'm meeting you. I followed you to I don't know if you remember, I was like chasing you down.
Yeah, at the book signing thing. I met you at the book signing part, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I
remember talking to you. And look, man, I want to tell you, Joseph, I appreciate you having follow-up and follow through, man. You said you were going to follow through and get in touch with me, and you did, man. That's what it's all about in life. Not everybody has the ability to follow through. A lot of people, they talk, man. They have these thoughts. They want to do great things, and they say all this great stuff they're going to do. My first cellmate in prison was a guy named Carlos, man. And if you read The Change Agent, Carlos was the guy that gave me the fan motor to kill the other guy with. Carlos was a good dude. Carlos was about 5'2", little Hispanic guy from San Antonio. Carlos was lethal, though. Don't let his size fool you. He was a dangerous dude. But Carlos, we would sit and talk in my bunk in the cell every night. I'd be in my bunk, he'd be in his bunk. And one night I was telling him about the coffee at the top bunk. And he said, hey, man, that coffee bean thing is great. He said, but you're never going to get there with the way you think. I said, what do you mean? He said, man, you have to change the way you think to change the way you act. And the coffee bean's all about the way you act, right? He said, all action is born of thought. He said, the way you think now won't get you there. And he said, a lot of people just have thoughts with no action. And he told me this riddle, Joseph. He said, 3 frogs are on a log. One of the frogs makes a decision to jump. He said, how many frogs are left on the log? And so I told him 2. And he said, wrong. The answer is 3. All 3 frogs are still in the log because the frog that made a decision to jump, he didn't have any action behind his decision. He didn't take any action after his decision. He's still sitting on the log with the rest of the frogs. So that's the thing about life. We've got to take action in our lives, and you did that, man. You took action by getting in touch with me. So I'm honored to be on your call today, man. Thank you.
Man, I appreciate it, man. That's huge. So for all of you guys who don't know, Damon, he was a D1 college quarterback. And he ended up going through cycles. We have ups and downs in life. And the one thing I always preach is life is like a roller coaster, man. We have our ups, we have our downs. It's all about how you determine your choices in those times. It's all about choices. You can make one choice and it takes you the wrong route. You make another choice and it takes you to the route that could possibly bring value to other people. And you've done both. Damon was a college quarterback. He was, because of a meth addiction, he actually, and I'll let you share a little bit about that as well. He got sentenced to 65 years in prison. So from a D1 college quarterback to 65 years in prison. And after 7 years, and one thing I love about you, Damon, is you always talk about it being a God thing. And I know both of us, being in recovery, understanding there's nothing that we can do without our higher power. And he does things for us that we can't do for ourselves. And hearing your story, how you talked to Dabo Sweeney and stuff. So after Damon had gotten out, this is the first book. Now, you wrote this book before The Coffee Bean. That's correct? I want to make sure
a lot of that book was written in prison too. Excuse me.
We're good.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, a lot of that book was written in prison. But yeah, that book came out in March of last year, and The Coffee Bean came out in July of last year.
And The Coffee Bean was written actually with John Gordon. And I remember I was listening to an interview. I was doing a little homework, kind of looking at some more stuff, and I heard you talking about him being the 11th most influential motivational speaker in the world. And you got to write a co-author with him. I think that's awesome, man. And one thing I want to touch on. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, John's the 11th most influential, I mean, it was just amazing to have this guy on the other end of my phone wanting to do a book with me. I was floored.
Now, I wanted to ask you, a lot of people, let's start off based off what you just said about the follow-up. I think a lot of people sometimes they make decisions. I mean, coming from where you came from, and if you can just kind of share real quick, a quick 5-minute synopsis of who Damon West is, things you've been through, and how you got to the place you're at now.
Yeah, man. So I grew up in a little southeast Texas town called Port Arthur. Had every opportunity in life. Was a great high school football player, a star quarterback, 3 year starting quarterback for my high school team. Went on to play college football. Got hurt when I was playing college football. Got into substance abuse really hardcore in college, cocaine, ecstasy pills, that kind of thing. Graduated college, moved off to work in Congress in Washington D.C. Worked in Congress. Worked for a guy running for president. Worked on Wall Street. I was a stockbroker in Dallas. And I got introduced to meth for the first time when I was a broker in Dallas. And meth was a game changer, man. Meth was that drug that grabbed me. I mean, it was, it's the most evil, most addictive, most destructive drug I've ever encountered in my life. And I gave everything away for that drug, Joseph. We talk about in recovery all the time and addiction that no one takes anything from us. We give it away, man. And so I gave up my job, my home, my car, everything. And I was homeless. And I started breaking into people's cars, breaking into people's storage units, and eventually I started breaking into people's houses and committed a string of burglaries that went on for 3 years. They called them the Uptown burglaries because the Uptown neighborhood of Dallas is where they started. And after 3 years of committing property crimes against the people in Dallas, the Dallas Police Department put an end to the Uptown burglaries. On July 30th, 2008 is when a Dallas SWAT team came in to the apartment where I was at and took me down. And that began the first day of my incarceration. Incarceration, I had no clue how long it was gonna last. And to be honest with you, man, when I first got arrested, all I cared about was trying to find a way to get high again. And I never found that way, thank God, because my sobriety date is July 30th, 2008. I mean, I tell people all the time I was taken into sobriety at gunpoint. And I went through Dallas County Jail for 10 months, waiting to go to trial. And at the end of 10 months, I finally got my day in court. And actually, I got more than one day. I got 6 days in court. And 6 days is a long criminal trial in the state of Texas for crimes that are not aggravated, crimes where no one was hurt in the commission of my crime. They're property crimes. But at the end of 6 days, the jury of my peers, they heard enough overwhelming evidence of my guilt to deliberate for 10 minutes on my sentence. 10 minutes is not a long time for a jury to be gone. And at the end of 10 minutes, man, they handed me 65 years, which is a life sentence. They gave me life that day. And so I was running around Dallas County Jail asking everybody how I was going to survive. And there was this one guy in there, this older African-American man named Mr. Jackson. He was the only one that was telling me something different than what everybody else was saying. Because everybody else I talked to that had been to prison said, you got to get into a gang. You can't survive without being in a gang. You're going to the life sentence building, man. You're going to the worst part of the prison system. But Mr. Jackson told me the story about the coffee bean, and he said, imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And he said, anything we put that pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. And that's when he said, I'm going to put 3 things in that pot of boiling water and watch how they change: a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. And so he said the carrot goes into prison hard, but the prison changes that carrot, turns it soft. He said the egg goes into prison, the egg goes into prison with that soft liquid core where his heart is, But the water turns his heart hard. He said if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving and receiving love. He said you become institutionalized if you become the egg. The egg turns hard in that pot of boiling water. But he said the coffee bean, the smallest of these 3 things, he said, small like you, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot. He said, everybody in life puts out energy, Joseph. He said, negative or positive, whatever kind of energy you put out, you attract back. It's called the law of attraction. He said, so if you want to walk around prison with a mean mug on your face and a scowl all the time, you want to look hard, what you'll actually do is attract that same kind of hard individual into your life. And he said, on the life sentence building, that can be a very dangerous, even deadly endeavor. He said, but Wes, if you walk around that prison with a smile on your face and you let those guys know they're not getting to you, no matter what they do, they're not getting to you. He said, you will change that prison from the inside out. He said, the best part about it is the other coffee beans in prison, the other positive inmates will find you because of your energy. And the last thing Mr. Jackson told me before I got on that prison bus was go out there and go be a coffee bean. And so, Joseph, I took that coffee bean message with me into prison. I did 7 years and 3 months in a maximum security prison, but I found out how to become a coffee bean inside that prison. And to this day, that's what I practice, is being a coffee bean. And right now, the entire world's in a pot of boiling water. I mean, 34 million people are out of work right now. This happened in 6 weeks, man. This is something that happened just like that. And so the entire world is in a pot of boiling water. So the coffee bean message has never been more important right now, in my opinion.
Man, I think that's all. And one thing I wanted to ask, going from, I think a lot of people right now is change, right? Going from right now, you just talked about, we got an environment, and I had talked about it on a little video that I had about how, a lot of times we were going to work, and when we were at work, we couldn't wait for the weekend, we couldn't wait to get home, and now we're home, we can't wait to get back to work. And in your life, you had all these changes. Now you talk a lot about servant leadership, and that's something that I could relate to a lot. Can you like touch on that? And you said that is your biggest mission statement. How do you go? How does somebody like yourself? You went from an uptown burglar, you know, to now servant leadership. Where does that value come from for you?
Servant leadership is what I learned. I learned this in prison, that the secret to life is actually servant leadership. And servant leadership is defined as, you know, helping other people achieve their goals in life, serving others and being humble, helping to raise other people up to a different station in life. Because when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best. That's when we're actually really living our true purpose. And I learned it from a guy named Joe Tatoris. And Joe Tatoris was, he used to come in and volunteer at prison retreats. You know, you could find him every Monday night inside of the Mark Stiles Unit prison where I was, the maximum security prison right here in Beaumont. I live in the same town where I went to prison. And so you could find Joe there every night, every Monday night. He would also do these little 4-day retreats. And these guys that would come in on these 4-day retreats, they give up their jobs, their lives, their homes, their careers, everything. They give it all up for 4 days to spend time with us. The cursed, the wicked, the sinners, the incarcerated, you know. They truly lived out that gospel, that Matthew 25:36. When I was in prison, you visited me. And so Joe, I got to be good friends with Joe when I got out of prison. And I say got to be because Joe passed away this past August, man. And my friend and my mentor, I miss him so much. But I got to be pretty good friends with Joe. And so Joe always talked about servant leadership. And I asked Joe one day, Joe, how'd you discover servant leadership? Tell me that story. So Joe told me his story. Joe Tatoris graduated Texas A&M in 1970. He moved back to Beaumont, where we live, and he got married to his high school sweetheart, and he started his own little sandwich shop in 1976. Opened his first sandwich shop, had 4 employees in 1 store. But today, Jason's Deli has over 300 stores. They're in 30 different states. They've got 12,000 employees. I don't know if they have Jason's Deli where you live. Do they have it out there? Jason's Deli?
I don't think so. Not that I know of. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's a sandwich. It's a healthy food place. It's a restaurant, but there's a chain. There's tons of them now. There are over 300 of them in America. They're all over the place. And so Joe said it was the early 90s, and Jason's Deli was growing. They were starting to franchise out, and he said he was doing everything that he learned how to do in business school, which is to go out and chase every dollar down because the almighty dollar was king. But he wasn't happy. He wasn't being fulfilled in life, and his business wasn't reaching its full potential. Until one day when he went to a business seminar, and the guy speaking that day was a guy named David Glass. And David Glass was the first CEO of Walmart. He was the guy, Sam Walton handpicked this guy to be the first CEO of Walmart when Sam Walton stepped down in the late 80s. And David Glass gave a presentation that day called Servant Leadership. And it blew Joe away. Because up until that point, Joe thought, well, that a servant was someone that did the menial tasks. They swept the floors. They carried the towels. They did things that the leader didn't want to do. Because the leader sat back and he watched all of his servants work. That's what a leader does. That's what Joe thought. Well, Joe had it all wrong because the leader's job is really to help his servants out, help them become better people in life, help raise them up, help them reach their goals in life because everybody has hopes and dreams. And he realized that he wasn't helping his people reach that. So he went back to Beaumont and he changed the way Jason's Deli did business. Started taking better care of his employees, gave them better wages, gave them better benefits, better health care, everything. He said it cost him more money on the front end. But what happened next changed his business. And it was like rewriting the way business was done. People went to work for Jason's Deli now, and they didn't just go work there for a few years, a stepping stone in their career in life. They made a career out of working at Jason's Deli. These people went there and they took pride in their job. They loved Jason's Deli. They took care of the customers better than ever. And what happened is that, people go work there forever. I travel all the time. I travel all over the country to speak. And if I'm in a town that has a Jason's Deli, I'll stop in that Jason's Deli. I like their food. I like to pay homage to Joe. But I love finding the manager, the general manager, and asking them, hey, how long has your longest employee been here? How long have you been here? The answers are the same everywhere I go. 18 years, 25 years, 35 years. Hell, one employee told me one time they've been at Jason's Deli for 40 years. 40 years at a restaurant, Joseph. No one does that, man. Who goes to work at a restaurant for 40 years? Joe told me that his other business friends and CEO buddies would ask him all the time, Joe, man, where do you find your people from, Joe? We need to find people like that. And he said the same place you find your people from too. But it's what happens when they get on the inside, man. It's servant leadership. And servant leadership is when we find ways to help those out around us and they raise everything up to a different station. Because we all had help along the way, Joseph. And Joe, Joe was a great guy. Joe had a jet. He had all the means to do anything he wanted to do in life, but he loved hanging around the marginalized in society. And so I'll try to emulate Joe's life as much as I can.
Man, you do an awesome job at it. I've been following you a lot, and everything I see is you going into colleges and speaking to kids. And I always say, our greatest past in recovery, we have a book, and in the AA book is one of my favorite quotes. My wife had put it on a t-shirt for me, that our past is the greatest possession we carry. It's our dark past, and with it, we can avoid misery and death for other people. And I know you talk a lot about using your example in your life to be the example, and talking to other people so they don't make those same mistakes. Now, I wrote down a question here, and a lot of times I think you talk about in recovery, because a lot of some people, there's a couple guys even in Europe. By the way, if you're watching here, comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. I think it's big, so we can get this out there as well. So if you're watching from somewhere, let us know where you're watching from. Let Damon know where you're watching from.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
something huge for us. But someone had asked me, he literally wanted me to ask you this question. I thought it was a great question. You had talked about in recovery, and I watched some of your stuff as well, and you speak about being sober and how long you've been in recovery. And you say there's a difference from being sober and being in recovery. Can you touch on that a little bit?
So my sobriety date, the day I got sober, was July 30th, 2008. That was the day a Dallas SWAT team took me in, man. And I tell people all the time, I got brought into sobriety at gunpoint, but I wasn't in recovery at that point, Joseph. And the difference is this, man. Sobriety and recovery differ in the sense that, you could be sober but not have a program of recovery. And a program of recovery is so important for addicts. And I say this all the time, that every addict needs a program of recovery. I don't know what your program of recovery is. Mine, look, in the AA, people go nuts when I say it, but I'm in AA. I've been in AA since prison. That's when I got into recovery. In July of 2011, I went to my first AA meeting and got the big book in my hands and started getting into a program of recovery. And that's when I got into recovery. So there are two different dates, because when I got into recovery, as opposed to just being sober, I found the tools with which to have a normal life. I found the tools with which to live with my addiction. Because here's the thing about addiction. Addicts, they'll never get well. We'll never get well, but we can get better. But we're never going to be cured of this stuff. And if someone told you, if you had AIDS or cancer or lupus or some shit like that, if you had another disease like that, and someone said, hey, take this pill every single day. And if you take this pill every day, then you will not die from your disease. You'll die of some other cause somewhere down in life, maybe of old age even, but you'll have a normal life and your disease won't kill you. Man, you would take that pill, wouldn't you, Joseph? Hey, you bet you would. And so that's what a program of recovery is for an addict, man. It's our pill, man. We take it every day. And to take that pill every day means that you surrender and you admit you're powerless over it. And you find ways to do service work for other people. You find ways to stay grounded in your program of recovery. And if you have a thought, this is one of the great tools of a program of recovery. This is why there's such a big difference between a sobriety date and a recovery date for me, is when I got into recovery, I got tools. And the tool gave me a chance if I had a thought. Because addicts have we think differently, Joseph. We have a different thought process. An addict has a thought. Let's say it's to drink or something. That thought becomes an obsession. And that obsession will play around in your head until it becomes physical. Thought, obsession, and physical. That's how we think. Normal people have a thought about drinking and they let it pass by one side of their head to the other. They don't obsess over drinking or doing drugs, But we have that thought, and that thought controls us, man. It makes us obsess over it. And so what you have with the program recovery is you have ability to get that thought out of your head. I'll give you an example of how this works. I'd been out of prison for 13 months. I was at a Christmas party in December of 2016. I got out November of 15. December of 2016, I'm at this Christmas party with my friend and his wife. And my friend's wife is sitting there drinking a glass. Sorry about that. My friend's wife was sitting there drinking a glass of red wine. And I'm around people that drink all the time. But this glass of red wine that she had, I could smell the grapes in this wine. And it smelled good. And I thought to myself, man, her wine smells good. I bet her wine tastes good. I wonder what a glass of that wine would taste like right now. And I froze. I was like, holy man, I can't believe I had a thought like that. So I told my friend and his wife, I said, I got to go. Because I had my first tool. I have a tool that I can use in program recovery. And that is to call someone else in the program and tell them what's going on in my head. So that's what I did. I went to my phone. I went to my car. I got on my phone. I didn't even leave. I called my sponsor. And I told him what happened. And I said, man, something terrible just happened. So I told him, and he started laughing at me, man. I said, what are you laughing about, man? This is serious. He said, no, it's not. He said, you're an addict, man. It's only serious if you don't have a program of recovery, because you're going to have these thoughts all your life. He said, your brain likes to repeat success. Addicts' brains do this. They want to repeat success. He said, your brain wants to relive all the good times you had when you were drinking and drugging. He said, because you had some good times out there. I know you did. He said he did too. And my sponsor's a recovering addict, drugs and alcohol, and he's been to prison. So he's a lot like me. He said, I had some good times too. He said, but the bad times were way worse. He said, but your brain's forgotten the bad times and has euphoric recall is what it's called. He said, so congratulations. You used your program recovery, you used your first tool. Now we're going to use our second tool. So now I'm discovering what my second tool is because I have a program, right? He said, the second tool is called playing the tape out all the way to the end. He said, so I want you to imagine you're back in that party and you have that glass of wine. He said, so are you drinking the glass of wine? I said, okay, man, I'm drinking the glass of wine. He said, good. How does it feel? I said, it feels good, man. I hadn't had wine in years, man. It feels good. He said, good. He said, let's get past that wine, though, because that wine's telling you it wants something else. What did you like to drink in the world? What was your drink? And I said, well, bourbon. I love bourbon. I drank a bottle of bourbon a day at one point, you know. He said, good. He said, drink bourbon because that's what you want to drink. That's what the wine's really telling you. The wine's not the problem. It's telling you something. He said, so drink that bourbon. He said, now let's get to the real stuff the wine's telling you because, you know, you like to do drugs. You're like me. You want to do drugs. He said, what, now you're doing bourbon. What drug do you want to do? And I said, well, cocaine, because cocaine and bourbon go together so well. He said, that's right. He said, if you're going to be drinking bourbon, you got to just snort some lines. He said, go snort that cocaine. Do the cocaine. And he said, but I know you, Damon. He said, you didn't go to prison over bourbon or cocaine. He said, what did you go to prison for? What do you really want to be doing? What is that wine really telling you? And I said, meth, man. Meth was the mother of them all. I said, if I'm going to be doing drugs, I got to do meth, man. He said, very good. He said, smoke that meth. He said, you like to smoke it? Smoke the meth. He said, smoke it up. He said, I got a question for you. He said, how is parole going? I was like, ugh, man, I wasn't even thinking about parole. He said, we never do. We get our addiction. In our addiction, we don't think about things like that. We don't think about parole. We don't think about our families, our jobs, our kids. We don't think about those things because anything we give up our goals to meet our behaviors. That's what addicts do. He said, addicts give up their goals to meet their behaviors. Normal people give up their behaviors to meet their goals. But if your goal is to be a great person, a great father, a great husband, you'll give all that up in pursuit of your drugs. He said, so now that you can't fulfill your obligations to parole, he said, what did parole tell you when you left prison? So, well, that if I violate my parole between now and the year 2073, that they would keep me for the rest of my life until 2073 this time. He said, okay, so where are you now? Back on that prison bus, man. I'm on that chain bus. I'm chained up to another human being. I'm being shipped off to prison. I said, I've destroyed my family for a second time. I destroyed my new family that I have now. He said, Damon, he said, you're going back to prison for the rest of your life. He said, look, man, when you get to prison, he said, I want you to take your mattress and your bags. He said, throw them in the cell. He said, you've been on a 10-hour bus ride. You're gonna be hungry. He said, head on down to the chow hall. He said, let me ask you something. What was the worst meal they served in prison? And man, without hesitation, Joseph, I could tell him, pork noodle casserole. Hell, I don't even know what's in pork noodle casserole. And I don't think the prison people know what's in it either. It's just
they call it dog food.
Yeah, dog food. He said, good. He said, go down to that chow hall. Get you a nice big bowl of pork noodle casserole and wash it down with that glass of red wine because that's where that glass of red wine is going to take you. He said, you got it? You understand? I said, yeah, man, I think I do it. He said, good. He said, I want you to do something. He said, I want you to hang up the phone with me and go back in that party, enjoy yourself like a normal human being, have a good night. And he hung up on me. He said, but that's the thing, man. He played the tape out all the way to the end for me, Joseph. I sat there in the car at that party where I could have sat there and said, well, no, I don't want to have that drink. I'm scared about doing it and gone off and gone on about my night. But then I woke up the next day and I thought about that drink again. Or I woke up the next day after that, the next day after that. And eventually, because that drink is in my head, I'm going to put that drink in, man. And it's not going to stop with that. It's going to end up being methamphetamine before it's all over. But because I got that out of my head and because he showed me where that drink would take me, man, I haven't had a thought like that again since. But if I have a thought again, I know where to go with it.
And I think that's such a valuable lesson, just not even in recovery, man. I think a lot of times, like I always say, like you had a tool that you used, and it's also you got another person's perspective. Like a lot of times, even in life, we make choices, and maybe it's not something that somebody may not be struggling with in recovery. Maybe it's a choice, a life choice, that you're looking at it through your own pair of glasses. And I think sometimes that could be, I don't want to say it's distorted, but we look at it through our own eyes. And that's why I think association is powerful, because you had a good tool that somebody associated in the program that could lead you to show you what that decision would make with a different pair of glasses.
Absolutely. I call it position determines perspective, you know. Where you've been determines how you see the world. And so when hearing how other people see things is very important. It's very valuable.
I love that, man. Hey, I don't know how much time we got left. I got one more. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time, but I could be on here forever.
No, go. You said you got one more. Yeah, no, go ahead. If you got one more, let's fire it off.
Yeah, man. I wrote down. So this is the question. I'm just going to read it kind of how I wrote it. So I know a lot of people have pain in their life, right? Or they've caused pain. They've made decisions. They made mistakes. Now, you've done both, right? Good and bad choices. Now, what's your message to people who are stuck or judging themselves by their past? I mean, a lot of people, what made Damon different? You know, there's a lot of people that you and I know. I don't know how they do it in Texas, but in Florida, if you go to prison twice, they give you an A letter, 3 times as a B letter. So there's a lot of people that go back. They make those same mistakes. What made you different? I mean, when a lot of people, and I don't even want to just talk about recovery or prison, honestly, just not judging yourself based on your past or your choices. What would be your message to them?
So here's the deal, man. It took me going through a program recovery because in recovery, the 4th step in my 12-step program, you're writing down your fears and resentments and stuff like that. And I found out that my biggest resentment was against me, man. I mean, all these other things I resented, these institutions, these people, these places, these things. Yeah, I got to work through that. But the hardest one to work through is my resentments against myself, man. Because all the stuff I did, man, if somebody would have put my family through what I put my family through, I'd kill them. I'd kill them with my bare hands. But I'm not going to kill myself with my bare hands. So I've got to sit there and either loathe myself and hate myself or forgive myself and move on. And I discovered that the opposite of resentment, because a resentment's the number one offender for an addict. If we have a resentment, we hold on to resentment, that'll send us back out, man, almost guaranteed. The opposite of resentment is forgiveness. So I had to find a way to forgive myself and quit judging myself and quit worrying about what other people thought, you know, because that's one of the things you have concern with is, you know, are the people going to judge me? And look, the reality is that, yeah, it's going to happen. But there's 4 things I control. I control what I think, what I say, what I feel, and what I do. And, you know, I found out in life that most people in life are coming in need, not in judgment. I'm going to tell you a story about this. There was a guy named Mr. Rogers. He used to have a children's television show. I don't know if you grew up watching that. I did. I watched Mr. Rogers. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. He had a little children's television show. And before Mr. Rogers was Mr. Rogers, he was a Presbyterian minister. And this is back in the 60s. He said he went to a church service one Sunday. He said, and the guy saying the sermon that day was a substitute preacher. Never seen him before, right? Sermon. And at the end of this guy's sermon, Mr. Rogers thought to himself, that was the worst sermon I've ever heard. He said it was terrible. It was awful. And he said it went against every rule of giving a good sermon. Hell, he said it put him to sleep almost, you know. And just as he was about to turn to the woman next to him and tell her how awful this guy's sermon was, he stopped. He bit his tongue. Because the woman next to him, she was in tears. She was in tears, and she turned to Mr. Rogers, and she said, that was the most beautiful sermon I've ever heard. She said it was the absolute right thing I need to hear at the absolute right time in my life, and I will never forget where I was this day that I heard this sermon. And that's when Mr. Rogers realized that any one of us, no matter what our past, no matter what our background, every one of us has the ability to reach out and touch another human being in this world, whether it to be a messenger of hope, of love, of faith, of joy, of serenity. Everybody can reach one person. No one person can reach everybody, right? But everybody can reach one person. But he learned something else important that day, Joseph. He learned that while he was coming in judgment, you know, of that guy's sermon, she was coming in need. And I think most people in life are coming in need, and it's finding a way to fill that need. And, you know, while there's going to be some that come in judgment, the ones that are coming in need are going to be the ones that we have a chance to positively impact. And sometimes positively impacting those people is just by being an example of what recovery does in our lives, man. What recovery has done in your life, man. Look at the stuff you're doing now, and you're clean, you're sober, and you're able to be a husband. I mean, do you have kids? You have kids too?
Yeah, I do.
You're a husband, you're a father. I mean, to someone out there, they're looking at you and they're like, man, I want what he's got. And man, and you get a chance to be that messenger of hope to somebody else. And that's a beautiful thing about recovery is service work, man. The original question was about how to deal with that stuff and, you know, and had the way you judge yourself. But man, when I got outside of myself and I started finding ways to help other people out, and I made it my mission to be a servant leader, that's when I truly grew. And that's when I got out of my own problems. You will find that if you bury yourself in other people's problems, if you find ways to go around finding other people to help out, that your problems really aren't as bad as what you think they are. It's when you get there and wallow in your problems that your problems become more severe. Because here's the thing. You can look at your life through the lens of one of two things. We were talking about lenses a while ago. There's fear and there's faith. My buddy and co-author John Gordon talks about fear and faith all the time. And he said fear and faith have more in common than just the letter F. They both believe in a future that did not happen yet. Fear believes in a negative future. Faith believes in a positive future. So just like your shirt says, choose faith. Go with the positive future, because when you pick the negative path, because now when you're believing in fear, you're making decisions based on something that hadn't happened yet. I mean, that's the thing we do. We go off into another reality, man. It's not even real. And now we're basing decisions that we're making every day on shit that hadn't happened, stuff that hadn't happened yet, man. That's when our minds get clouded and we start making poor decisions, because now we're living in fear. Fear can grab you and make you do things and say things and be a part of something that you would never do normally, man. Fear is a liar.
False evidence appearing real.
That's it, man. That's it. I'm sorry about my language, man. I get excited sometimes and cuss every now and then, but that's just me being real, man. So, listen, man, I've really enjoyed today, man. Thank you for the opportunity.
Dude, I appreciate you giving us time. I think you brought a lot of people value, not just the ones watching, the people that are going to rewatch this. I do appreciate your time. This has meant more to me. It's helped me. If it hasn't helped anybody else, you talk about helping one more person. That's my mission statement. So let's help one more. If you guys haven't gotten his book, it's The Change Agent. I got to put it out there, guys, because I've read it. It's amazing. I mean, I read it in like 3 days. It
thanks,
had me
man.
turning. So it was awesome.
Dude, that's awesome. Thank you, man. On Twitter and Instagram at DamonWest7. My website, DamonWest.org. And you can email me through my website. It's Damon@DamonWest.org. And my books are on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, a place where books are sold. Coffee Bean to The Change Agent. And look, man, you gave me a chance to be useful today. So I ask God every day for the same thing, man. I've been asking since prison. God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize it when I see it. So you were put in my path today, man. Thank you, Joseph. I really appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. Guys, if you like this video,
Awesome, man,
go ahead and like it, comment, and share it. Thanks, Damon, for your time. We appreciate it.
Awesome, man. See you, brother. Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
All right.